All right, you guys, you beautiful people. Today we need to have a talk because one thing I am seeing and noting everywhere is a very common theme and a very common pattern as to why so many people are struggling with the application of the law and why so many of you are not seeing any results. This is also by and far the most common question that I get. Why is this not working? Why am I not seeing my manifestation? Why is it that it's been X amount of weeks or months, but I'm still not seeing anything? Zero change, zero movement, nothing. And there's actually quite a simple explanation for this, and it's what I want to talk about in today's video. So if you are somebody who has struggled with these teachings, with applying these teachings, if you are somebody who is not seeing results, you're gonna want to watch this one, and I hope you listen not just with your ears, but with your entire being. Because if there is one thing that I wish I knew when I was new to the law, when I was fresh on my journey, if there was one thing that I wish I knew and understood, is that we are emphasizing way too much on the physical 3D experiences. We are giving way too much of our attention and our focus and our attachment to the outside world. Couple of disclaimers before we jump into this. Number one, everything that I say in this video is coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of wanting to see you succeed, but sometimes I just gotta be blunt with you guys, because I love you. And number two, I am in no way implying in this video that you give up wanting your 3D experience. I am not at all saying that your 3D is irrelevant or that you should only have what you desire in imagination or that you can't have it in the 3D or anything like that. Just so we don't get it twisted. Gotta make that clear. So I don't want to beat around the bush. I want to get straight to the point. The reason that you are having such difficulties with these teachings is because you are focused far too much on the 3D. You are far too attached to your 3D circumstances and your past experiences and all of the reasons as to why what you desire is not ultimately possible. You are still far too fixed on the 3D. And even though this is Law of Assumption 101, one of the very first things that we learn is to deny the evidence of the senses, to not give any credence to the 3D, that regardless of what the 3D looks like, shouldn't ultimately matter. We hear it all the time. You just got to ignore your 3D. Circumstances don't matter. Da 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 da. We've heard it. We can recite it in our sleep. And yet, we are still emphasized way too much on the outside and not giving anywhere near enough attention to where we are dwelling internally, to what we are thinking and assuming and how we are reacting. We continue to check the 3D for validation. We continue to check the 3D for signs or movement or progress. We keep on gauging said progress by what is happening outside of us, when the focus should not ever be on the 3D circumstance. And it is also completely understanding as to why we are doing this. Because for the vast majority of the people watching this video, we've been conditioned our entire lives to judge after the 3D. We've been seeking for things that give us pleasure and fulfillment and satisfaction on what is happening outside of us. We are so conditioned to the 3D circumstance that it's all we ever really notice. All our lives, we have relied on the 3D circumstances to trigger that feeling inside of us. That feeling that we desire, what we desire to feel, is always tied in with the experience. Ultimately, the reason that we struggle is because we still look at the 3D as reality. We're seeing the 3D as the real world, and all of our focus and attention and emphasis is on the physical plane. And we are looking at imagination as if it is just fantasy or fiction. It is illusion, all the while we have it completely backwards. There are two concepts that I really had to grasp and learn and understand before my world radically changed. Nothing of great significance in my world changed until I committed and accepted these two concepts. Number one, that what I imagine what I am imagining is actually reality, that it is just as real as what I am perceiving in the 3D. And number two, that everything in my 3D world, no matter how terrifying, no matter how significant, no matter how bad it seemed, had no significance on the realness of what I had imagined. That nothing in the 3D could take away from the actual real thing that I had just imagined. Until I accepted what I was imagining as actual and fact, and that what I was seeing on the outside had no bearing on what I had imagined. Until those two things were solidified within me, I did not see change. Nothing of significance anyway. My perspective and what I was perceiving as real for me had to change. And the same applies for you and everyone watching this and everybody who desires to have success with the law. So long as you are continuing to perceive the 3D world as more real than what you are imagining, so long as you are continuing to give your focus and attention to the 3D circumstance, so long as you're thinking that what you're imagining is just a means to an end and that it's not actual reality, it is very likely that things will just remain the same for you. We hear all the time that our circumstances never matter. We hear it so much that it's just kind of a buzzword these days, but we need to stop and think about the significance of that statement. No matter how the 3D is being perceived, no matter how real it feels, no matter how impossible it feels to overcome it, the conditions of our physical world doesn't matter in the slightest in regard to the actual reality, to the actual realness of what we just imagined. And the detriment of this outlook is that we are giving our power away to it. We give this amazing power that we hold, the power of our imagination, the creative power to change our experience. We're giving that to outside circumstance. And the entire point of these teachings is to take your power back. But that is not possible to do if you continue to see your 3D as more significant, more impactful, more profound than what you are imagining. Because the truth is, when we imagine, we're not just constructing a fantasy, we are previewing an actual reality that exists. Everything that we are imagining is but a preview of a state of consciousness that we can experience here in the physical world. So we have to be deliberate and we have to be committed to living from the one power and one source of all that is in your experience. And that is you. That is your imagination. If you are still reacting to the 3D, you have given way too much significance and power to the 3D. And the 3D is just a mirror. It's just a state out of infinite states in existence. Do not use your 3D as a gauge of progress. Do not look for external validation as to whether or not this is working. The only gauge that you should be using is how you are feeling, how you are reacting, what you are assuming, the thoughts that are coming up for you. The emphasis needs to be on the world that exists in your imagination and what you are consenting to as true in your imagination. Do not constrict yourself in imagination. Do not fall into the trap of fear that you won't get what you want, because it is this fear that we have that is keeping us in bondage. This fear of our 3D circumstances is what's keeping us stuck and why we are ultimately not seeing any change. Start with the question, not of what you want as far as the 3D is concerned, but how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel loved? Do you want to feel prioritized and chosen? Do you want to feel satisfied? Do you want to feel abundant? Do you want to feel like you're free of all obstacles? Once you have determined the feeling that you want, then give that to yourself. Give yourself the feeling and the experience that you desire to have. I will repeat this like a broken record over and over and over again. But your imagination is your creative power. Do not be afraid to use it. Do not be afraid to go beyond the senses, to go beyond the circumstances, to go beyond the conceptions of what you think is true or real or possible. Get rid of all of that. Imagine boldly, be bold. If you want to be a multi-millionaire, then do that. If you want to be in the most incredible relationship with the most amazing version of your person, then do that. Give that to yourself. You can give yourself that feeling right now. You do not have to wait. There is nothing to wait for. In imagination, all states exist, all states of consciousness. You can go anywhere, you can do anything, you can be anyone. Do not accept living in an undesirable state in imagination. Do not continue to dwell somewhere that you do not desire to be, because in imagination you can move. You have the freedom of movement. There are no limits to what you can have in imagination. And that is the entire point. Because the 3D is just the expression. It is just what we are experiencing in imagination expressed. The law is incredibly simple, and we do not need to overcomplicate this. We do not need to do 1,000 techniques a day in order to get something. We do not need to wait for the manifestation to unfold in order to experience that feeling of relief or satisfaction or gratitude. We do not need to be a slave to the physical senses, because no matter what, you can have anything in here, right now. We must stop turning to the 3D for validation. We must stop giving all the power and significance to the physical experience. If we continue to see this as us trying to change the 3D, we're going to be paralyzed with fear. It's going to feel impossible to do that. But in truth, you do not need to change the 3D. You only need to change how you feel, how you imagine. And that, my friend, is entirely your domain. You do have control of your imagination. You can go anywhere in your imagination. You are not limited the way that you feel you're limited right now in the 3D. So do not limit yourself any longer. And since the 3D is just the reflection of where we are in imagination, since the 3D is just the mirror and the outpicturing of what we are assuming and what we are feeling, then when we change what we imagine, when we change how we feel, the 3D in and of itself will change. That's how mirrors work. If I change myself, then I will see that change reflected in the mirror, but never the other way around. Let yourself be bold here. Allow yourself to boldly assume and boldly imagine. No matter how impossible it seems, no matter how much we think that this is not going to happen, no matter how much we fear that this isn't going to work for us, do not let those be things that hold you back. Because in truth, if we do not shift mentally, if we do not shift in here, then nothing out here will change. And if we continue to keep ourselves fixed on the circumstance, the old story, the old news, and the old outpicturing, we're going to get more and more and more of the same. You must believe in the validity of that new self. You must believe that what you have imagined and what you have felt is real before you'll see change on the outside. And once you do this, once you have the understanding that your imagination is reality, once you begin to perceive your imagination as the real world and the 3D for what it is, the mirror, that is how you take your power back. That is how you stop looking around you for movement or change. That is how you actually begin to manage and live in that wish fulfilled. And that's how ultimately you will manifest anything that you want. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope this helped clear some things up, because this one is a doozy. If there's only one concept you must understand, it is this one. So if you enjoyed this video, if you found it informative or helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in checking out any of my other resources, I will have links down below to my coaching programs, my workshops and masterclasses, my blog, my podcast, my social links. Got a ton of good resources down in the description box below, so don't forget to check that out. Also, be sure to check out the other videos on this channel. Be sure to check out my Manifestation Fundamentals playlist. Each video is a different topic, but it all pertains how to manifest the best life ever. So until we meet again, you guys, as always, please take care, be well, and never forget that your imagination is the true reality. Take your power back. Happy manifesting, guys.